As one of the world's foremost experts on learning and human development, and a member of the Junior League of Seattle for more than 50 years, Dee Dickinson has pioneered a number of innovative programs that continue to enrich the lives of countless school children, parents, and educators. Many of these programs have begun as league projects. The Northwest Art Project brings the rich heritage of Northwest artists to local elementary school children, trains teachers to use art as a key educational tool, and spreads Northwest art love around our community. Like our founder, Mary Harriman, Dee is a true agent of change, creating a lasting legacy that has set the stage for future generations to continue improving lives. Without further ado, I'm honored to introduce the wonderful Dee Dickinson.
Thank you very much. I'm always happy to be back with the docents of the Northwest Art Project. It's always something that I look forward to every fall. And I think you all look younger every year. It's not that I'm getting older, of course. Anyway, it's a great pleasure to be with you. As for some of you who have heard me before, I hope you don't mind my repetition, but perhaps it won't hurt to hear some of these things again that are the reasons we started the Northwest Art Project and why it is still important today. I think it's quite an interesting story, and it bears repeating, I believe. So, as a reminder that we all know very well, the arts have been the high point of every civilization. No, that's not right. They have been the high point of every culture before there were civilizations. There were carvings and paintings on the walls of caves. There were the drummers, there were the dancers, there were the singers, there were the pottery makers that wanted to decorate their pots. Look at all of that background. And it's no wonder that every civilization has had it at its high point, because the arts are not only culturally important, but they are critically important for learning, for teaching higher order thinking skills. And it's just a very, very sad thing that when there are budget cuts in the schools, the first thing to go is the arts. I have seen this over and over and over again. And it's as though the pendulum swings back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. In 1957, Sputnik went up, and the boom came down on education, pointing out that we weren't doing a good job in teaching science and math, and we should swing way over to that area. The arts, unfortunately, were left high and dry. So what a tragedy. Today, we have kids who are not doing well, who are in the achievement gap, or maybe not very good students. The arts are the ways to reach all of these kids. There's no excuse for an achievement gap. In more recent times now, we have, once again, the equivalent of Sputnik, and that is something called STEM. How many of you are familiar with that? Ah, yes. And how many of you immediately thought, we should put STEAM back into STEM? And yes, it was sort of pervasive, clear across the country. Everybody thought of the same thing at the same time. That science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math. Years ago, some of the great universities in engineering found that their engineers were graduating with wonderful technical skills, but they were not able to do innovative and creative thinking as the things speeded up and there all kinds of changes took place. So in any case, they reinstated the humanities, and that added a lot of richness not only to the lives of their students, but to the abilities they had after they graduated. Critically important. There are reasons that I personally have experienced why the arts are so important, and I think much of it has to do with my background in school. I went to the Bush School when Mrs. Bush was there, and she was a protege of Dewey. So the great artists, there were great artists on our staff all the time. We learned dancing with one of Martha Graham's proteges. There were painters, and there were sculptors, and there were novelists, and there were poets, and they were graphic artists. All of those people were part of our lives. I remember that in our choir, we had an opportunity to sing with the Seattle Symphony Orchestra during the season of Christmas time. We also painted a whole series of paintings that were exhibited at the Seattle Art Museum. So, you know, it's part of our lives. And every November, we would live in the Middle Ages. We learned the dancing of the Middle Ages and made stained glass windows from the Middle Ages. We did all kinds of things that were the kind of learning by doing that makes such an impression on students forever. In 1959, I was chairing the Community Arts Committee for the Seattle Junior League. And this was a time when it was a high point of great Northwest artists. Toby and Graves and Callahan and Horiuchi, all of these people were part of our community. They were alive and they were producing and they were amazing. At that time, of course, we were once again experiencing the budget cuts that created a gap in what the arts were doing in the schools. And I remember visiting schools very often where there were dark, uninspiring halls that had old faded reproductions, nothing that you would want to live with or be inspired by. So we talked a great deal during our time together, and we decided that what we should do is to bring real paintings and artworks into the schools so that children who had never had an opportunity to go to the museum and perhaps had parents who had never been to a museum might experience what real work looks like up close. And I thought, well, you know, what we really need to do is have the blessing of Dr. Fuller at the Seattle Art Museum. And this was at a time when there was no downtown art museum, for those of you who are new to Seattle. It was only in Volunteer Park. And Dr. Fuller's marble floors were very precious to him. Sometimes I was teaching art in the basement with children after they had been inspired going through some exhibit. There was no running water downstairs, so I had to carry buckets of water downstairs, and Dr. Fuller would follow me with a cloth, wiping out any possible drips that might be on the floor. So I went to Dr. Fuller and I told him what we wanted to do. And he was sitting at his desk fussing with paper clips, and he said, "My dear woman, one does not give children caviar, one gives them strawberry ice cream cones." Well, I said, "Dr. Fuller, you know, we're not only doing something wonderful for teaching the children, but we're also creating the new museum goers that will be coming to your museum in the future." That didn't cut anything with Dr. Fuller. And however, we knew how important this was. Kenneth Callahan was a very good friend of mine, and I decided to visit him next and bounce the idea off of him and see what he would say. So he said, "Oh my God, that's the most exciting thing I've ever heard." He said, "Come with me." So we went upstairs to one of his guest rooms, and he pulled out from under the bed 3 magnificent paintings. Whoa. He said, "I've been saving these for a major museum collection. Take your pick." I practically fainted. and this is what we chose. So this is the very first painting in our collection, and it's called Crystalline World. Callahan had been a fire lookout, and so he spent a lot of time when he was young looking at the mountains surrounding him and being inspired by imagining what might be in those rocks. So when you have a chance to look at this closely, if you have not seen it before, you will see that there are all kinds of beings and interestingly arranged. Here is something like a uterus, like an unborn child, except it's a curled up old man. What an interesting idea. Someone on a horse, a dog over there, a child, and a baby. But what an interesting thing we have been able to have here. We then came to the idea that there was more to this than just looking at paintings, that we could crawl into the paintings, we could smell them, we could walk inside. And Callahan even said, you know, I want the kids to come up close and touch it and feel it and smell it. If it gets dirty, clean it, bring it back to me and I'll clean it off with a raw potato. That was a very different attitude from Dr. Fuller's, to say the least. So what I was starting to say is that there are more ways to look at these paintings than just an ordinary vision of them. And that leads me to another topic that I want to touch on today, and that has to do with how these experiences can lead to the development of different kinds of intelligence. How many of you have ever heard of Howard Gardner? Gardner was a very interesting psychologist, but he was also an artist. And he was the head of something called Project Zero at Harvard. After I started New Horizons for Learning in 1980, we were very interested in following up, because needless to say, with my background, I knew how the arts were going to be very, very important to our work in education. So I had been following for some time his work in combining his work in psychology, education, and the arts. And then I heard that he had received a special award because of a new idea that he had about multiple intelligences. Not just visual, not just logical, mathematical, and literal ability, but the multiple intelligences of a very different kind. Next thing I heard was that he had published a book called Frames of Mind. The Frames of Mind talked about 7 possible different kinds of intelligence. You each have a handout that looks like this. On the inside, the second page, you will see a mind map of Gardner's multiple intelligences. You will see on the left side verbal, linguistic, and logical mathematical intelligence. These are, what we test on for IQ scores, for job applications, and various kinds of other tests. But Gardner points out that there are at least 7 kinds of intelligence that are not considered really to be intelligences, but rather talents or skills. He suggests that these are indeed as important. There's visual spatial intelligence, which is what we use when we look at a wonderful painting like this. It is the kind of intelligence that we make sense of the world through our eyes with. It is the kind of intelligence that we use when we make a mind map like this to put ideas together. Is the kind of intelligence that architects and artists use. Then below that, you'll see bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Now, bodily kinesthetic intelligence is often a very high skill among little boys. They like to move a lot. They like to move around a great deal, sometimes in the classroom, to the distraction of their teachers. But also, a lot of kids who really learn by doing end up in special ed classes, which is a tragedy. There are many ways to teach through active kinds of learning. We're going to talk about some of those later on. And then there's intrapersonal intelligence, that is the ability to bring our thoughts and feelings from inside of us into the outer world, whether we do so through our paintings or through written expression or through music, but not just having feelings that are bottled up, but being able to use them expressively. There's interpersonal intelligence, not just the kind of ability that are the kinds of things that we use when we cooperate in a group, but also understanding how to be a leader as well as a follower, and how to work collaboratively on these ideas. You'll see this happening as you work with your groups. And then there is one intelligence that he added after he had the first 7, and that is the naturalist intelligence, which is probably sort of the linchpin that connects them all. And it is the ability to make collections and see what are the common denominators of various kinds of things? It's the kind of intelligence that collectors have, collect various different kinds of things, but also the kind that we use when we communicate with the world of nature, plants and animals. So those are the kinds of intelligence that we're going to use when we look at some of these paintings. And when Helinka comes and talks to you, and I want to say that Helinka Wadziki is the reason that the Northwest Art Project is what it is today. She has been absolutely instrumental for the last 15 years in helping the project to flourish through her planning and her design and her training and what she has written and what she has produced. It's absolutely fabulous work. So in any case, Helinka is going to show some other different kinds of ways that we can use in understanding and appreciating the arts and being inspired by them. And some of you who are a new docent might be absolutely surprised with what happens that are not just inspiring kids to do another creative painting or carving or some kind of artistic production, but also perhaps a poem, perhaps a story, perhaps acting something out, perhaps vocalizing, perhaps creating a song. It's amazing what all this does. I want to refer back to something that I did early on in the late 50s when there was something called the Seattle Creative Activities Center. It was was started by another junior leaguer, Ruth Lease. And Ruth Lease knew that the arts were very, very important. And so she created in an old house on Capitol Hill the Seattle Creative Activity Center that taught kids through all of the arts. We danced our paintings, and we sang our poems, and we acted out our stories. I was the first director there, and I was absolutely amazed when I would get phone calls from the parents to say, I thought my son was in an art project, but can you tell me why his math skills are going up? And I remember well another woman who said that her 12-year-old daughter was in the process of writing a novel at home. She couldn't wait to come home from class to start working on her novels. So this is an example of all these learning by doing kinds of things that are stimulated through the Northwest Art Project, among other wonderful things. So on the page next to Gardner's Multiple Intelligences, I'm not going to go through all of this, but please study these different ways of looking at the arts and doing something with it. Okay? How many of you have a pen? All of you? Okay. On this back sheet, you'll see there is a blank there, and later on, I want to give Helinka now time to do her work. No? Can I go on a little bit?
Absolutely.
Oh, all right, fine. On that back page, at the top, you can see that Howard Gardner made this quote: if we can mobilize the spectrum of human abilities, not only will people feel better about themselves and be more confident, it is even possible that they will also feel more engaged and better able to join the rest of the world community in working for the broader good. Then under that, from a very old book but stands very, very well in accuracy today, a book by Albert Moravian called Silent Messages, he notes 10%, people remember 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, 50% of what they hear and see, 70% of what they say or write, and 90% of what they do. So as an example of this, I would like you to make a circle under this, in this blank part of the paper. And, excuse me, a small circle, because there are going to be spokes out of it. We're going to do a mind map that is similar to this. As you can see, there's something in the middle that says multiple intelligence, and then there are spokes out from it. You see? Okay, so in this case, what I'd like you to do is to make a circle and put in the middle of it the name that you would give to this painting. And then, as quickly as possible, without very much logical thinking, make some spokes out from there about what that painting and the name of it suggests to you. And I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do that. And then we're going to do something else. So work very, very fast. And this is a messy project. For those of you who are logical, sequential thinkers and like to make things in lists, neat and orderly, this is going to be an interesting experiment in what it's like to make a mess and be comfortable with it. So just work very, very fast, almost without thinking. Okay, now look over what you have written, and below, write something. It can be in any form, but try to pull together what you have created above.
I saw a lot of dreamlike forms, and that came out of my initial title when I was reflecting on that, which was Dark Dawn. And I really sort of saw an awakening and sort of an unfolding before breaking out, because the figures seemed to be sort of softly awakening. And then I really started seeing that green as sort of like a fluorescence, and thinking of like that early dawn. And you're not seeing sunshine, you're seeing that early emerging light. So that word emerging kept coming up.
And did you write this in words?
So I wrote just phrases like individual dreamlike forms, encased, light slicing through dark fluorescence, unfolding before breaking free.
Ah, interesting. Well, you know, what is really interesting about this is that this is a way of tapping into creativity and creative thinking in ways that taking notes or making an outline never would. I was the head of the English department at the Bush School for many years, and I always used to have my students turn in an outline with the papers they were writing. And I came to my great surprise one day when I found that some of them were writing the outline after they'd written their story or their report. And then I learned about these mind mapping techniques, and it explained the whole thing. So there's no right or wrong in how you do this. Some people are more logical and can make an outline and have it be perfect the first time through and work from there. For other people, this mind mapping process is a breakthrough in creativity, and it can open you to new ideas that you never could do in an outline. So after that, then I had them take their choice of whether to do a mind map or an outline, or to do a mind map first and do an outline after they've done the mind map. But it is one of those very interesting examples of how multiple intelligences are at work to break open creativity. Interesting possibilities that I'd like to have you play with sometime. Poems have come out of this. As a matter of fact, somebody's novel came out of this process at one point. I want you to try one more exercise with this that you might be interested in working with the kids on. First of all, imagine yourself getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and find yourself encased in a rock. Close your eyes and just imagine that you are encased in a rock to the point that you can experience, whether it's light or dark, whether there is any smell in there, whether there's good air in there, or whether there's no air in there. What is it like to be encased in a rock? Sit with that for a moment, and then break out of the rock. And what happened? So you'd be amazed at what the kids do with that one. That's very, very interesting examples of what came out of that. Some poetry sometimes. Fascinating. Anyway, okay, so Halinka, please come and take it from there. Now, Halinka is the master at applying these different kinds of skills, not just skills now, intelligences, to exploring the arts in this way.
That's a really tough act to follow. It's a little intimidating, but thank you so much, Dee. That was so inspirational. So it is a great joy to be able to work with all of you on the art that's a part of the collection. And so what I'd like to do today is to talk a little bit more in depth about the way that we teach and why we teach in the way that we do. And so I'm bound to echo a lot of Dee's points and comments. Quite frankly, I've been so inspired by Dee's work that it's just become a natural part of what we do. So you will see some repetition, you'll see some common themes. 54 years ago, Dee Dickinson and the Northwest Art Project sought to revolutionize the schools and to bring back arts education. And as Dee mentioned, that void is still here today. We do have there's some great hope though. The Creative Advantage, which is a private and public partnership with the Seattle Public Schools and the Seattle Foundation and the Seattle Office of Arts and Culture through the city, have put together a partnership and a mission to change that deficit that exists. They have a goal that by 2020, all children in the Seattle Public Schools will have adequate access to arts education. So all of the work that has been put forward by Dee and the Northwest Art Project is really in just a phenomenal position to enjoy that growth that's going to be happening in this community. So there is a lot of faith in arts education. We believe in what we're doing, and I want to just reiterate why we do what we do. So the Northwest Art Project and teams like the Creative Advantage, they want to change the lives of students. They want to make their lives richer, and they want them to be adults that lead meaningful lives. And so that's a really pretty daunting and pretty powerful goal to have. And we've got that goal with the Northwest Art Project. So the way that we do this, how do we do this? Quite simply, we bring original art into schools or into informal places of learning. We've really expanded the project to go beyond a classroom environment and taken them into very interesting places that you'll learn about over this next year. But we take original art, so it must be something about the power of that object to transform lives. That's what we do, we bring it in. But there's something else that we do, and I think it's fundamental to the way that we teach and the way that Dee has inspired all of us to teach and to work with students. And that is that we are interactive. We converse with them. We meet them on the level that they are at. And so we, in that way, we're meeting with them and bringing them on this journey. It's not like we're lecturing to them. It's not like we're telling them what they should think and feel, but rather it becomes a guided process. So that is really the core of what we do and how we do it. It's that interactive learning and that interactive technique that we have. So through interactive learning, and I'm going to go deeper into that, the other thing that we do is when we bring original art into any place of learning is we slow down the looking process. Everything is so much about the quick take, It's even getting faster. I have raised children in this digital age, and I'm just observing even my little 10-year-old and how fast he thinks and how much he's inundated with so many visual images. Well, we do the opposite of what they're used to on a moment-by-moment basis. We slow it down and we strip away any sort of instant sort of satisfaction. And we slow it down, and sometimes it's a process that people are uncomfortable with because they're so used to working so quickly. But we slow it down so that that magic of the artwork can really be unlocked for the student. So our teaching requires time. We may only work with 2 to 3, maybe 4 to 5 pieces in the hour that we have with the students. So we slow down the looking process. The other thing is that we do, and I mentioned the interactive, is that we talk. We ask questions, we debate, we discuss, we dialogue, we see where other people are at. One of the most important things that we do too is that we make it relevant to their lives. And this is a very key component. They have to care about what they're looking at, and they have to establish a relationship with an object that they may feel very, very distant from and just not a part of. And so relevance is a huge part of what you will do as you teach and as you work with children in these settings. We ask them to think about, what does this mean to me? What is it teaching me? What sort of story is it telling about my life? How is it getting me to think about a challenge that I might have, or an idea that might be brewing, or something that's confusing to me? How can it change me? How does it relate to me? And that's all about building a fundamentally strong relationship. So you're relationship builders. You're building a relationship with an object and an individual. So all of this is supported, and I know that Dee has touched on this a little bit, about brain research. It's been going on for many, many decades, and it's only becoming more exciting. Over the last couple months, I've really been diving deep into brain research about creativity and where it's going, and it's an extremely exciting field. So brain research says, and Dee, I know that you know this, is that the brain is a muscle. And like, if you don't go to the gym, you're going to become weak, and you're not going to be able to run, or you're not going to be able to walk or be active. And the brain is the exact same way. And that is the same as a child as it is for an adult. You have to work that muscle. So the way that we teach make brains work. I'm not going to tell you what you should be thinking, but you've got to puzzle through it on your own and make your brain do that exercise. And sometimes it might be confusing, sometimes you might be really put off by what you're looking at, you might not understand it. You will likely walk away not getting it, but maybe the next day or the next time you see it, or when you go home and you think about it, your brain will start firing neurons and piecing that puzzle together. So through the work that we do, we're exercising the brain. I mean, quite fundamentally, that's what we're doing. And what's really interesting about this is that learning is not passive. It must take work. The other thing that's emerging out of new research on the brain is really feeding into the Common Core standards and into the 21st century skills that we've probably all heard about, that are very familiar. But this whole idea of a growth mindset, and that again has to do with the brain working. A growth mindset is a mindset that we all should aspire to having, and that is that anyone can learn anything at any time. We've had a school system that's really rewarding a fixed mindset, one that rewards people memorization, that rewards people just regurgitating information that they've heard. Fixed, focusing on your skills and not on what you're not good at, not focusing on really penalizing kids who make mistakes. And in fact, mistakes should be treasured. They should be something that you should celebrate and say, okay, let me try that again, and I will grow and I will become something different, and I will become better at something. And so all of this supports that type of work and what is so necessary in being a thriving adult in our society and culture. So the teaching methodology, just to kind of get a little bit deeper, so I'll start giving you some more examples. But so one of the things that you do as JLS docents, again, no matter who you work with, is one of the things that we like to do is just in your mind as you're working with students is to get it to be, for them to view an artwork as if it's a puzzle. And what's wonderful about that is that they're a puzzle and there are lots of pieces to that puzzle, and they have the freedom, you have the freedom as a viewer to put all those pieces together in whatever way you want so that you can own it and you can make meaning for it for yourself. So that's really another core way that you work with art with your students, is that it's a puzzle and it's their responsibility to piece it together. Again, it's that independence of learning, and you're just a facilitator of that. The other thing that we do is through our teaching is that big ideas are revealed. And sometimes they happen, in fact, very often they come as a surprise. Lots of big ideas surfaced from the exercise that Dee was doing earlier with you. There were some profound discussions, profound observations that were being pulled. I heard aging, I heard memory, I heard love, loss. These are profound human experiences that all of us at some point in time will experience. When you work in this way with students, big ideas like that will surface. Some of them will surprise you, and some of them you will expect because you will become familiar with the work and you may expect. And there's a piece out here that we'll look at today, and it has to do with something that I am most recently really embracing, and that is the truth that we all know, but we probably resist it. And that's the truth that the only constant in life is change. How many of you know that? But it hurts, doesn't it, sometimes? Or it really just, it's something we struggle. And so that constant, that the only constant in life is change, is something that an artist here was confronted with. She was surprised by something that happened to her that changed the course of her life. It was completely unexpected. And so an artwork, a visual form of communication, became the way for her to sort out her fear, her uncertainty, maybe a little bit of anger at this thing happening to her. And so children get to see that art, visual art, is a way of puzzling through something that's inevitably going to happen. Someday you're not going to like the course that your life is taking and you've lost control. So visual art becomes a way to, for them to access that. So that's a big idea, right? Change is the only constant that we have. There are lots of big ideas. We've worked with art. Dog Days of Summer is one of my all-time favorites. It's not up now, but you likely recognize the piece with a little dog. It's on the cover of the book, and there's a little dog, and there's a lovely, lovely story that emerges, and that many, when they see it, see this dog that's kind of lost, and where is he going? What's he thinking? And inevitably, a child sort of connects that he might not be alive, and that this actually might be a painting about a dog that's passed away, a puppy that's passed away. And so a conversation inevitably arises about losing a pet, losing someone you love, and how do you memorialize that, or how do you process that? And this artist painted dogs for at least 2 years of her life. That's all she could do, is because this puppy was taken away from her too soon. So children get to learn, and these big ideas emerge, and they become relevant to them. We will all experience those things, and that relevance comes back. So our docents, Dee had listed off lots of ways that we access art. It's not just through discussion and debate and dialogue and conversing, because quite frankly, I'm the quiet one in the back. I'm the one that would prefer to draw, or I'm the one, or maybe there's a kid that would prefer to, role play and act it out, but actually be a character rather than me saying something, but pretend to be something in the painting. Not be called out. So we do a lot of role playing and drama and skits and lots of different ways for them to make meaning and carry that within themselves. So the way that we ask questions, because this is where it's sort of the root of what we do, is It's the art of asking questions. And questioning is just such an incredible teaching method, I think. If you just hold that in your kind of in your bank of what your little back pocket, like I don't know what to do. Questions, open-ended questions, questions that just open doors rather than close them. Ones that just get them to think about something that they've never thought of before. When you work with art, and we're going to do a lot of that as we break out into groups, and we're going to get deeper into each of the content areas that you're going to be taking out into schools and into other places of learning. The fundamental thing that I say is that you will have kind of an embedded structure in your mind, but that's hidden and invisible to your viewers. They don't really know that you're kind of guiding them or manipulating them, but you kind of are. And you do that by just keeping in mind that you're going to go from simple to increasingly complex. And that makes a lot of sense, right? You don't want to start with the most complicated question first where everybody's just like, I don't know what to say, I don't know how to say that, or piece it all together. It's just super straightforward. Move from the simple to the complex. Move from describing, creating a common understanding of what we're looking at, moving towards analysis, which means relating one side of an artwork to another, exploring somebody else the way that they're seeing it, and debating about how they might be perceiving it, and then playing with interpretation, playing with storytelling, playing with what it might mean and where it might take you. And you might find yourselves talking about everything but the art piece in front of you. You might just find yourselves talking about something completely different. So that's sort of the framework that you've got in your mind and that you should expect. But it's not a passive role that you take. You are leaders of a discussion. You are facilitators, and I hope to work with you over these next few months on just kind of honing in on those skills of really guiding a discussion, so that there's so it doesn't need to necessarily be a resolution, but that there's these big ideas that are floating around. All right? So we do that. So what I want to talk about now is the effects of the learning and the type of teaching that we do. And I know that Dee mentioned this, but if you have this sort of picture of the way that we teach, it's interactive, it's dialogue-based, lots of role-playing, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary approaches to looking at art and exploring it. So that's great, we've done that. So what's the effect of it? Like, what are the outcomes? And that's such a big, important thing for anybody that's working with children, or what are the outcomes? And so the outcomes come back to these 21st century skills. So there's a whole list of them, and there's many people that have come up with, this is what we need now in the 21st century to be vibrant, contributing, good people in this society, good citizens and creative citizens. So I'm not going to list all of them because I couldn't, but I just picked up a couple on what our teaching and the Northwest Art Project and what it does. So the first is perseverance. So this is a huge skill. All of these are huge, but this is a big one. So when you think about it, and if you have children, or if you think about yourself, you may struggle with procrastination, or you may struggle with persevering. You may be the type of person that gives up easily. But in the end, in your heart as an adult, that to persevere and to struggle through and to achieve something there's huge rewards than to giving up. So how do we do that? We do it in small ways. We present an artwork as a puzzle. We present art that's kind of challenging, that has to be noodled around, and your brain has to do these exercises to get it, to make meaning of it. But there's that perseverance that takes place that we really foster, and that comes back to that growth mindset, which is another one of these huge 21st century skills. The idea that I'm going to grow and I'm going to learn something new, and the only way to do that is to struggle. If I'm not struggling, I'm not learning. Creative and critical thinking. So Dee mentioned this. This is what we do. we teach through this methodology, through having the visual art with the students, is we teach them to think outside the box. We teach them by the examples of these master artists, these masters. I mean, that is the other thing, that these are phenomenal pieces of art. They are an example for thinking outside the box, for thinking of something brand new that's never been created before. And so they are our model, they are our inspiration, and they're the students' inspiration. And the other wonderful thing about this is that there's multiple types of exploration. Here's a painting, but you go out there and there's a photograph that's been torn and cut and burned. And then there's a collage that's made of ripped paper by an artist who had lots and lots of pieces of paper. I think Dee's going to introduce you to Paul Horiuchi. So there's so many ways to express yourself. And so creativity is something that this program and the type of teaching really fosters. Critical thinking is another one. And the other two that are equally valuable is communication. So that's a prime 21st century skill. There's so many different methods of communicating now, but you as teachers are models of communicating. I think about my kids who are growing up in this digital age. My daughter who's going into 9th grade, I kind of wish I never got her that cell phone. I really waited, and she was the last one to get one, but you know what? She doesn't talk on the phone. She's a great communicator, though. But you're modeling communication. You're modeling speaking, articulating, describing, analyzing. And you're modeling it through your teaching and asking them to ask questions. They, in turn, an outcome may be is that they will ask questions, and they will ask good questions. And that's so fundamental to good communication. Collaboration is the last one that I'll sort of point out. And so collaboration is another one of these skills that in order to thrive and to be one of these people in the 21st century ready to go is to be a collaborator. And that's tough. The older you grow, the older you get. But for students, they need to learn to be flexible, to acknowledge and receive other people's perspectives. So the type of teaching that we do is very much about people voicing their ideas and opinions. They may be counter to each other, but we present them in a safe environment that allows for that, for those voices to be heard. We do activities where they collaborate. Think Pair Share is just one of those really quick ones, where they're collaborating. They're thinking by themselves, but then they're getting together and they're twisting their ideas and morphing them and putting them back together so that they come up with a collaborative statement about what they believe in. So those are the 21st century skills that we're really attacking and supporting. So I'm just going to spend just a few more minutes. The other, because I know that the Northwest Art Project may be brand new to some of you, but there are other ways that we support this work that's extremely important, and I'll just sort of list them off and you'll become more familiar with them. But we support teachers in the schools through professional development opportunities. So the Junior League, just over the last 2 or 3 years, has invested a lot of time and energy into working directly with teachers. And what's actually super exciting about this is that I would say at least, if not more than 50% of the teachers who are coming are non-arts teachers. So these are classroom teachers. These are teachers who are teaching all the subject areas other than the arts. And so we are on that mission to help them infuse art into the curriculum, to the social studies and history, science, math, and seeing how that can be relevant to those subject areas. The other thing that we have done and we've embarked on and we're halfway through is creating curriculum guides that support further classroom work. And so these have been reorganized into thematic units that are very much aligned with what kids are learning in the schools. And then I mentioned the cross-disciplinary subject areas that are being covered, and I could sort of list out lots of different lessons and things that we're doing, but those will become more familiar to you as you become more intimate with the program. So just in closing, this is a project that has the goals that are about changing lives. And that is a very powerful goal. However, it's what's so exciting about it is that you will see lives change in front of your eyes. You will actually see it. And that is the power of working with original art, and that's the power of this project. Even though it may seem like, gosh, well, how do you do that? But you will see a glint in a kid's eye, you know, maybe a teacher will approach you, and I know us who've been in the classroom have said, you know what, I just got to tell you, you know, that little guy never said anything before, but today you couldn't put his arm down. So he, you know, found something that spoke to him. And so that's the magic of the work that you do and the project. And so the seeds that are planted, they're planted early. And that's so important, is that those seeds are now being planted in those young kids because they grow so fast. They grow so fast. I'm about to send my son off to college and I cannot believe it. But they grow so fast. So you plant the seeds now and they are adults who are independent thinkers. They're able to think critically and creatively. They have the courage to take risks. And they're not afraid of the word mistake, or they're not going to crumple up their paper, but they're going to work through it. And they push beyond what their boundaries that they've set up for themselves, by the way, they put up around them. They push beyond those to places where they didn't really think that they could go. And that's the type of adult that we want. That's the type of citizens that we want in this world. So the 3 teams, the Northwest Art Project teams, all support these goals, from SPS to BAM to the League of Community Outreach. We're all united by these goals and are effective in achieving those through the work that they do. So I'll just close with something that strikes me, and I think I sort of touched on it a little bit, is that we'll never really know if we've touched someone's life, right? We will never really know that when you're in a setting and teaching kids, because an art experience should be, and often is, very private. And so that's our little secret. We'll just sort of know that, well, maybe I touched someone. But that will be revealed, and I know that it will be revealed later on in life, in their lives. But we do know that we can teach our children to be thriving and vibrant citizens in this world, because they will be tolerant, they'll be creative thinkers, they will persist, they will work collaboratively, and they will see joy in that. And I just think that this project is such a treasure, because we're able to see what so many others, it's invisible to so many other people. So as we work, we're going to have a really great time looking at a lot of art, talking about a lot of art, but keeping those sort of big goals in mind. And it's going to be a great year with so much fun and so many wonderful projects. So there you go. Isn't it going to be great?